I have with me today Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, and he commanded the Fire and Fury Corps that overlooks both China as well as Pakistan. It was a very crucial time when he commanded that force, and now he is, of course, with a distinguished fellow with IDSA, and he's also with the Vivekanand Foundation, and he's going to talk to us about the 4 years of the India-China standoff, because he knows the region well and he knows the terrain, which is really not something that most of us understand. Thank you for talking to us, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nayanima, for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. So, this is the 4th year when we are seeing that we are still sort of engaged in a bitter military standoff with the Chinese PLA in the eastern Ladakh. But in this 4 years, I'll definitely come to you as to where the status is right now. But let me take our viewers back 4 years back, in the sense, what really happened and why do you think this standoff went on for so long?
So, after 4 years, I don't think we need to call what's happening in Eastern Ladakh as a standoff.
Okay.
And it must not be taken as Eastern Ladakh alone. It must be taken as a complete northern borders, which takes from Karakoram Pass here right up to Kibitu, on the other side, which is Arunachal Pradesh.
So, the entire line of actual control.
Yeah. Now, if you go back to, we can go back to history of centuries, but it's not necessary for us people know nowadays.
Sure.
But the fact of the matter is that the Chinese have been claiming the watershed, which is, as part of the 1959 line. 1959 line, there is no legal basis to why Chao Lai decided on that line. There is no logic to it. But that line which he said in 1959 came up in 1960 actually. It actually occupied, it was wanting to take over the watershed. Now, watershed I mean is that there is a plateau. We take Dapsang as a plateau, or Tibet as a plateau, and at the edge of the plateau there is a mountain range, and the mountain range, it drops it sheerly, comes down towards Indian side, which is a series of mountain ranges. But on the Chinese side, there is a plateau largely. So when they made a 59 line, they included the edge of this mountain range. So that becomes a watershed which sheds water across to Shyok River, or toward Indus River, you been towards Chushul side, or towards Pegongso. So, it's that thing. Now, there have been those agreements and treaties from 1993 onwards, which were under discussion, where a line of actual control was first spoken of in that 1993 treaty.
Right.
A line means a line between two people. A line between two houses, a line between countries. A line is a decided line between two people.
Right.
Now, this is a line of actual control, which colloquially everybody talks about. But fact is that two countries did not decide a line. So, the whole concept of line of actual control was incurably flawed in that manner. Because till the time you decide and demarcate. Now, if you recollect, Nayanima, we go back to Shimla Agreement.
Right.
After the Shimla Agreement, Mrs. Gandhi and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, they got two journals together. General P.S. Bhagat and General Hamid from Pakistan. They made 29 mosaics and 18 maps, and every inch of the line of control was marked on the map and sorted out on the ground. This line of actual control, there has been no demarcation. So, we make a judgmental issue as this is the line of actual control. The Chinese have their own thought process of, they stick to 1959 line, which is no logic. So, there is no line decided between two people. And that becomes a basic of controversy. So, anytime we were used to do patrolling from all these years, last 2-3 decades, there used to be problems.
Right.
There are protocols decided to sort it out. But since President Xi took over in 2012 and 2013 he became the president, the events happening on the line of actual control on Eastern Ladakh became more serious. There was a 22-day standoff which happened in April 2013. Then there was a longish which happened in Dapsang. Then there was a longest standoff in Chumur. Then again there were issues in Dapsang in 15. 2017, you will recollect, there was a 72-day standoff in Doklam, which is in Sikkim area, Sikkim, Bhutan. So the things are becoming more serious as we came into 2012, 13 and onwards till we come to 2020. Now the Chinese came, and what Chinese did in 2020 was nothing that they had done earlier. Everything must be taken as a first. This was total new what they did. They came over a very large front, which is about 800 kilometers. They went to every pass which gave us access to which we used to patrol across towards the Depsang, towards the line of actual control. And they denied us patrolling into those areas. So, and they brought large amount of formation units from Taklamakan desert in Xinjiang and placed them close to us. So they created a threatening posture, and then they occupied 800 kilometers of the areas, and most of the passes were occupied by them. Now that changed the whole character of it, because everything was new. 2020 had not happened in last 7 decades of what happened in 2020. Of course, there was a war in 1962. Now, there has been large amount of conjecturing as to why the Chinese wanted to do that.
What was the trigger?
Why did they do so? And you can say, some people said the bridge we made on Shok River or the roads that we were constructing and all those issues. But Chinese are deep people. They do not decide on things at an impulsive manner.
Correct.
I would say that they have a Great Wall of China mentality. If you have a Great Wall of China, they want to secure their territory. And to secure their territory, it's important to occupy the highest mountain range, which comes up from one side, Karakoram Pass, and it goes across all over. So while they did something in eastern Ladakh, the other areas they could not do so. There is a capacity limitation of what they did. So they did eastern Ladakh and they occupied it. And thereafter, the discussion took place. Now, occupying means they denied us patrolling rights, which we used to patrol, and we denied them patrolling rights to some areas they used to come to, and which we also blocked them. So there is a kind of standoff now. You can call that as a standoff. Why did Chinese do this? Of course, they say every inch of territory left by my forefathers is mine, and we will protect it. This is what Chinese have been saying. But I think beyond that, there is also geopolitical issues.
Okay.
It is India's potential rise. We have great amount of potential. Now our potential is evident in the course of last 8-10 years. We are rising, steadily rising, and we have the potential to become a power to reckon with in this area. In Asia, the Chinese will hate the idea of having a power which can stand on its own feet.
Right.
We have our own importance here in the world, importance in the form of relationships that we have over centuries in Africa, in Central Asia, in Middle East, in Southeast Asia. We have maintained relationships. Chinese are buying relationships. They buy influence. So they do investment
with their deep pockets.
Their deep pockets. Now we also have a 2,000 kilometers of peninsula that juts into the Indian Ocean.
Correct.
Which is exceedingly with the Chinese will dislike, because their maximum trade comes through that area. So I would say that one is an issue of a geopolitical challenger. Chinese would hate the idea of having a multipolar Asia. They want a multipolar world, but a unipolar Asia in which they remain the. Second is the issue of their territory, which they have been talking about, my forefathers, etc. And third is they want to make the border. Indian border was active border. There were too many of these things happening on the border in the last 10 years. They have made the border kind of benign. They have cooled the border down because of buffers being created, etc.
Right.
And now they can focus to their larger ambitions of becoming a global power by going across towards the high seas to maritime frontiers. So they have on their own side tried to create a little peace along their borders by the buffers created.
Correct.
I'd add one more thing. Now the border is 3,488 odd kilometers, 4,000 kilometers you can count, of which eastern Ladakh is over 1,000 kilometers. The balance of area, the Chinese have been prodding in various areas at various times. Yangtze is known to you. It happened 2.5 years ago. But many other areas, Chinese have been prodding on this area to find where there is a foothold. So the Indian response after 2020 has been so robust and strong that not only that we occupied the areas in proximity of what has happened in eastern Ladakh, but we also occupied the balance of line of actual control right up to Kibitu,
Okay.
telling the Chinese, after this, if you want to touch any other territory, you have to fight with us. It won't be happening without fighting a war. So there is a kind of stalemate created all along the borders, where we have much escalated deployments, very large escalated deployments all along the borders, and the Chinese having built up infrastructure and force levels in Tibet and southern Xinjiang, which cause a little threat for us.
So, good that you gave such a detailed response on this, and that really will help our viewers. But there is this question that comes up, and I'll come to the second part of the operation, of course, like the Kailash Range operation and others. But prior to this, just before April 2020, we saw, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting twice in informal summits, informal setup, first in Wuhan and then, of course, in Chennai. And there was a roadmap that was drawn up, and everything looked as if, the peace and tranquility factor in the border will remain, and the relationship will probably go to the next stage. Then, of course, the Article 370 abrogation happened, and we heard from Home Minister Amit Shah that, when he claimed that even Aksai Chin is ours. So many experts do say that maybe that was the trigger. Do you also feel like that? Is it related, or you think that no, they really had to grab that land?
So, look, firstly, Article 370, it's an important event, very important event in the history of India. It happened in 2019. But what did happen in 2013 when they had come and occupied the area of Depsang? There was Article 370 that time. What happened in Chumar in 2014 or Doklam in 2017? All these events were happening which have not happened prior to 2013. This is the first time happening. So the events were building up to this stage of 2020. That Article 370 happened cannot be taken as it can be a catalyst. It added on to the issues, but it is not the end all of the issues. It's been happening over a period of time. It is an issue which the Chinese were planning over a period of time. Now, I'm not even saying that, of course, the two principals, the President of China and the Prime Minister of India, met twice informally, but they may have met 13, 14 times informally also.
Yes.
And there were WMCC meetings, 15 of them, which happened in the same period, which is a diplomatic effort. And then military level meetings were happening at lower levels regularly. Even in 2013 they happened, in 2014 they happened. So, I won't say it's only the principles. At multifarious levels, at the foreign minister level, at the diplomatic levels, at the military levels, they have been meetings all along. Of course, the Prime Minister and the President have also been meeting. The thought process that they would do so, whether they did it in 2020 or they could have done it in 19 or 21 is a separate issue. But it is a long-term planning. In China, there is no ad hocism in thought process. It is not that they are jerky in the decision making. It was premeditated, pre-thought about, well-planned move that if they have to rise to a level of global affairs, they had to put the border on the Indian side to some kind of rest to their advantage, so that they can venture other areas, Taiwan and to Philippines, that was been happening around in South China Sea. You can't have a tiresome land border and a tiresome sea border. No country can aspire to become a global power with a difficult first island chain, very difficult, and a very difficult 4,000 kilometers border with India, where the Gutham Gutha, the fisticuffs, and this was continuously going on. So, their aspirations to become a global power would have been stuck into this game between the land borders and the first island chain. So now what I would reckon they have done is that they have made buffers. So instead of a line of actual control, they made a belt of actual control, because buffers are gaps in it.
Thick areas.
And they know that any other area they want to occupy, they have to fight it out. So the border is the way border is. It's benign. And there are no fisticuffs happening anywhere. But they are now pursuing their operations across to the maritime frontier. You see what's happening in Taiwan. They are at it all the time. They had one chap got injured in one of these collisions in the Philippines last 2 days ago. So they are in that mode. So I will not say that any one of these reasons of our infrastructure build-up or Article 370 or other issues that have been raised are the end all or the reasons for Chinese doing it. It has been planned over a period of time and executed in 2020.
So 4 years back on this month, we saw the Galwan Clash happening. Yes, unfortunately, we lost our 20 of our soldiers, but since then we have tried and prevented that kind of an attempt. It's not that the Chinese did not attempt; they did, but we were able to stop it. Now the question is, do you see if this prolonged this standoff, kind of extends, then will there be another Galwan happening? And also, how do you see this buffer zones will actually be coming into some kind of a solution, or this is a permanent feature now?
So who can tell the future? I won't venture into even guessing of what the future will be like. So let put the future apart. Galwan was a manifestation of proof that an escalation can take place anytime. When the troops are arrayed amne-samne, face to face with each other, there is always a possibility that something will go wrong and it will escalate. This had escalated in Galwan, but there were opportunities of same times all along the border, including at the Kailash range, where things would have been escalated and they would have gone out of hand. That's the nature of the beast. It is the nature of warfare. When troops are arrayed face to face with each other, and one party does not respond to what is logically the response should be, escalation is possible. In Galwan, it escalated. It did not escalate to firefight. It escalated to non-lethal weapons. But it was not lethal. People died, in that manner they were lethal.
That has changed now, no? Now we can use firearms.
Okay, now even then the firearms were carried. But the restrictions laid down in the treaties and in the protocols were that the firearms will not be used. Now the rules of engagement would have changed. Now the buffers being created are created, it benefits the Chinese because they don't have to do a fisticuffs again. They know that there is a gap between the two forces. But then there is also an issue with us that we have to be worried that lest Chinese infringe in one morning. The distrust that we have on the borders is so complete among the troops that they are anxious all the time lest the Chinese, they did what they did in 2020. They have tried it again in Yangtze or Rakula, maybe Barahuti or someplace. So there is a distrust here, and you now confirm the distrust by making sure that there will be anxiety that the Chinese will come and infringe one of these buffer zones one day and come across there. They have done things like this earlier. So there is a tense atmosphere, let me say, which is created across there because we do not know what is going into the Chinese future plans onto this score. So there is, and then I must add that if you see the infrastructure that the Chinese have created in last 4 years in the South Xinjiang region, which they call it Karakoram Plateau, and the areas of Tibet, there are runways which have been enhanced to 5 kilometers. There are heliports made all over the place. There are roads, there are railways, there are troop encampments, there are garrisons created, there are logistic stores, there are, when you see, so if you add all these together, the Chinese are now poised in sufficient strength there. I am not saying we are getting into a war tomorrow. No. A war is not inevitable. It may not happen. But the threat of war exists. When the threat of war exists, then you have to be prepared for that escalation that may take place, which may or may not have an excuse. It is just an event which escalates the issues there.
But that doesn't that put pressure on our armed forces also, sir, because they have to really focus on the western side also, which is an all-weather friend of the Chinese, and that's a perpetual tension with Pakistan.
So you, Nayanima, right? We have a situation on the Western Front, and of late, the situation which exists south of Pir Panjal range, where a series of attacks have happened.
The Rajouri-Poonch sector.
The Rajouri-Poonch thing, the one in Riyasi, two in Doda, one in Hiranagar, near Hiranagar. So when you, Kathua, so when you count all these and you put them together on a map, it is the entire range areas south of Pir Panjal that has been activated. And this is some kind of control being exercised from across the western borders, who are trying to enliven these areas. Maybe because the election is due in the state assembly, maybe there were some voids created because we had to reshuffle forces to make the Chinese front and all that. So all things add together. There is a little activity on the western front. But let me also put it, on the western front, we have great conventional superiority, and we have the capacities to take on Pakistan anytime. And Pakistan on its own has got grave internal weaknesses, maybe monetary, the financial weaknesses, political serious weaknesses. They don't have many friends. They have an active, their western border on the Afghanistan side.
That's true.
So to say that the Pakistanis will get involved into some big game with India is not actually on the cards. But having said that, it is they are an irritant and they will continue it, and maybe we'll have to start thinking about a stronger response one day if these kind of terrorist actions continue. Because some of the weapons found there, M4 carbines, these are brought from Pakistan. These are not our weapons with the terrorists. These are sophisticated American weapons which only the Pakis could supply, which they may have got it from the leftovers from Afghanistan. So the fact is that there is a border. It's not that serious affair on the Pakistani side. Their ceasefire still holding on from last 3-4 years. But the Chinese side is also, as active as it can be.
So now coming to also the fact that what happened really after Galwan, the Kailash range operation. Just for the benefit of our viewers, yes, we understood that you needed to get hold of the mountain tops, like the black top, the helmet top, in order to see the Chinese movements in the Moldo region. But how important was it at that point of time, and do you think that particular operation changed the entire standoff, and the Chinese were also forced to, come to this kind of arrangement of a buffer zone?
So undoubtedly, I would say that the operation was great. It also proved that there are plans existing in India on any one of these tiresome borders which can be executed at short notice. And there are force levels and plans which are made in great amount of detail. One such plan was executed in that time. And then execution of the plan was faultless. We were able to occupy a large amount of the ranges on either side of Spangur Gap. On the southern side, the Razangla, Richingla and Magar Hill. And then on the northern side, towards the lake side, the other areas of Gurung Hill. And so, so we were able to occupy. It was quid pro quo response and logical manner. And and the advantage is that it's not Moldo garrison, but Moldo garrison came as part of that circuit of you draw a horseshoe out of the areas that we are occupying. Moldo garrison falls in the center, the Spangur Gap. It's also that we were able to find areas where we could overlook deeper into the Chinese territory on the road that comes from Ladakh right up to Moldo garrison, and larger axis along the Pagongso Lake. So in effect, it was a superlative operation, very nicely done, very nicely planned, and very nicely executed, and there were reserves placed there to do all this when the task was being done, and it was successful. So whether it did make a tremendous amount of effect into the future course of issues that happened, because immediately after this happened, the next round of talks, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth round of talks that happened with Corps Commander, a thaw was evident. Now the Chinese had to get this area vacated and buffers created, because it would have literally turned the Chinese in their defenses there in the areas that they were occupying. So I think it mattered a lot. Certainly, it was visible in the areas of the fingers, which everybody now knows, between finger 4 and finger 8, which Chinese has actually come and built up semi-permanent structures at finger 4 and 5, areas where we used to patrol regularly.
Yes.
And this semi-permanent structure, which were visible on one side, you've been to Pagong, so you see from one side, you can see finger 4 and 5. They were semi-permanent structures, so they had to now dismantle all that and go back. And what are the forces that brought closer towards Kailash range had to be taken further back. So yes, it made a tremendous amount of change into the entire thinking process.
So then also, as you said that it changed in the thinking process, but do you think that also led to the disengagement in the Pangong So area?
Yeah.
But then after that, we saw a slowing down of the disengagement process. Why do you think that happened? Do you think, I mean, now the issues, the friction points is Depsang and Demchok. But apart from that, do you think we sort of more or less sorted this out? And those are
So
legacy issues I get to hear.
so I do not know, all these terminologies tend to confuse viewers to say what is legacy and what is not legacy. The entire border is a legacy issue. Which area is not a legacy issue? You tell me.
Correct.
And then when the Chinese came over a frontage on every known pass in that area, which became effective. I mean, in the areas of Depsang here, those are not friction points. These are the entire area that they occupied. So in each one of these passes there. So it is a deniability issue. I would say that they had planned to come in a manner and over time decided buffers were the ideal solution for them to deny access to Indian Army to go across towards the Depsang Plateau,
Okay.
which we used to patrol. So either we were patrolling from the bottleneck side, which is Raki Nala, or we are patrolling in any other one of these areas, which Chinese have now denied us. And each one of these areas, there is a time, there is a gap. Now you may call it buffer or don't call it buffer. Even in the area of Depsang, which is a larger issue is the accesses through Raki Nala. There is a bottleneck where the road doesn't exist. The Chinese are other side of bottleneck, maybe we are own side of bottleneck, like it happened in 2013. The fact is that, we used to patrol those areas which we can't patrol. Chinese used to patrol into own side in Burse, which Chinese also can't patrol. Chinese used to patrol to finger 4, they can't do it now. We was patrolling to finger 8, it can be done now. So there is a kind of fixated border now.
Right.
So I include Depsang as part of the fixation.
Okay.
So the entire area has been fixated in a manner which the Chinese are now created buffers on the highest passes in that
Right.
area, thereby denying us patrolling to Depsang and also not able to patrol into the areas to our side which they used to patrol earlier. Demchok is another issue. Demchok is separate. Demchok is not part of that area. It is further towards Tibet side.
Yes.
And the Demchok Nala itself, we used to do patrolling. Now there is a block there and we are not able to patrol further to the areas that we used to regularly patrol. Indeed, one can say that Demchok is a legacy issue and Chinese have been in this game at Demchok Nala, CNN Junction as we call it, for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, every time there should be issue on Demchok. So that's a block and we are not able to proceed further. So when you ask me to sum it up, I think the situation as it exists today, any prudent adversary to the Chinese are and which they think would know that there is no more possible beyond this, what they have done. And in my opinion, I think they would be holding on to these areas for a very long time, which makes it that we have to be prepared to be in the posture that we are today, including the large amount of reserves that we brought into this area and the logistics channels that we have created here, to stay on in this posture for fairly long time.
So, but then does that mean if you are saying that we are in it for a fairly long time, that means the demand for status quo that India had been asking for is also, let's say, far away from us, and the fact that we've lost patrolling rights in some of the areas. And when I was there, as you know, the locals there had complained, the villagers, that they have lost their grazing grounds completely, the winter grazing grounds. They cannot go to some of the mountain tops like the Gurung Hill, Blacktop and all that. And the topography more than anybody, any one of us here. If you say this is the permanency, then what's next? I mean, there is a kind of price we are paying for this, right?
So, you see, to say that there has been no loss of grazing grounds to the villagers will not be right, because the areas that you are referring to, Chushul village, very large village, and the villages which are on the banks of Pegongs or lake, did take their animals across into some areas. The armed forces have allowed, I'm told, the army have allowed them to take as far forward as possible without getting involved into the adversary's forces. You can't go too close. Something goes wrong, it will be a difficult situation to retrieve from. So they would have lost some grazing grounds in the foothills of the Gurung Hill, Magar Hill, the areas of Rachangla, those passes which exist in that area, and then there would be a loss here. The areas along the Indus Valley. Now, I do not know, when you turn from Loba, this Indus Valley which comes from Demchok right up to Dungti, that Indus takes a sharp turn towards India. Indus Valley on one side, there are grazing grounds which the grazers can use even now. It's across the river, which is the issue. Chinese are constructing now roads closer to that area, so there is a problem. If you say that historically we go back to 50s and 40s and that area, and we say that have we lost grazing areas? Well, indeed, we would have lost some grazing areas when you go back to history of 70, 80 years ago. Because,
no, but it's pre-April 2020 is what the government says.
April 2020, the loss would be there. See, in the areas of hot springs, the grazing is still permitted. It can go down. You can go across the Marsimekla Pass and go there. The grazing which took place along Indus River on one side is still continuing. But they would have been, I agree, some areas which have been now not easily feasible to be grazed for obvious reasons, that there are buffers created in those areas which are, you can't infract in that area. You cannot go venture into those areas because that's a tense atmosphere. So while, and I'm sure, which I follow what the grazing issues now going on regularly, there are endeavors made to find alternatives to the grazing areas which can take advantage across for the locals here. Otherwise, there would be some problems. Maybe some alternatives would be found on this one.
So then coming to border infrastructure, now that's also a debate that keeps on happening, that look at the Chinese side, they're so well developed, and this time when I was there in the Chushul Bowl, one could see those little Chinese units. But we are also building the CDFD road, which is called the Chushul Dungti road, which is completely non-existent now. I mean, after Chushul there is no road. But how key is it that you think, and how soon the government should ensure that road is built? And how will be that advantageous also for the armed forces?
So absolutely, see, there were times here a decade ago when if you wanted to build the road across to Demchok, the Chinese would have cried hoarse. They would have shouted to the rooftop saying you can't do it. There would be meetings at the highest level. Why are you constructing this road? And these are controversial areas, and the Chinese would be stuck. And we would also be hesitant to push issues. Our hinterland roads were not complete for that time. I think the infrastructure, we woke up at a top speed after 2020 to develop the road axis. And I mean, road is one part of infrastructure. There are large parts of infrastructure. But the road that you're referring to, which takes off from Chushul right up to Dungti, Tumchele, and right up to Chushul, to Demchok, I think it's about 150 odd kilometers, 75 kilometers, I think, from Dungti to Demchok itself. So that entire road being developed, I think is great. I've traveled on that road. I mean, I'm looking forward one day to drive across to that area to go to Demchok instead of in the dirt road which existed for 8 decades.
Yes.
So I think, as one day, not very far away, and I'm told this road might be through by the end of the year. If it is through at the end of the year, you can drive at one time maybe from Pegongso Lake and drive right up to Demchok on a metal road. Great show. Great show.
Wonderful. So my last question to you while we wrap up, I know you're having a busy time. Now that we are looking at a Modi 3.0, so to say, continuity of the CCS, we also have on the other side Chinese President Xi Jinping. He's going to also become the president. He's there for a very long time to come. Do you think in this sort of tenure, you think India should start a dialogue with China or some kind of, high level discussion to see that, there is some kind of resolution to the boundary question, or you think that's going to be hugely difficult?
So, if I have to talk pragmatically and understanding the last few rounds of talks at WMCC level or at the diplomatic levels or the Corps Commanders talks and all, I think they have run their course. And
And they can do as much.
what they have done, they have achieved quite a bit. But to achieve much more than this, because it gives an impression that the Chinese are accepting the fact that the way they are is what will remain, and they cannot venture forward to their claimed areas of 1959 line and or their areas of Arunachal Pradesh or anywhere else. It won't happen easily. So they are also convinced that it's like that. So the only way forward is to have a political discussion at the top levels to thaw out whether the disengagement takes place or not is a separate issue. Disengagement is an issue where the Chinese have to now retreat away from what they seem to be satisfied with, as the discussions give us. So if they have to vacate out of those areas, it will be actually retreating. How would they respond to their own public? What did you do in 4 years in case you have to move out backwards? So whether the Chinese will do so or not. But having said that, we are civilizational countries. India is a civilizational country. 6 decades of behind us. So is China civilizational countries. We are both on a very strong path towards developed nations, and there is need for socio-economic development, which is as important as anything else. So I would say that there is a need to easing off tensions. Nobody wants to go to war. The Chinese certainly don't want to go to war. They don't give an inkling. The kind of quantum of force that they have here does not mean kind of business that they want to fight a modern army like Indian army also. We are a very strong army. Especially on the borders, we are very strong.
We are much more professional army.
Yeah. So, if you're stuck, we are also standing there, and they understand they can't occupy 1 more inch without fighting it out. That's the change which has happened in 4 years. So, the only way out is that there has to be a pragmatic civilizational discussion between our two countries to say, we must ease off. Why should we have such large quantum of forces arrayed across on both sides of the border, giving a threatening posture? That talks can take place, which is not disengagement. I am talking about de-escalation. To de-escalate, which is the larger de-escalation across the borders, not the line alone. Line is disengagement. The Chinese don't give an evidence of disengaging any further. But de-escalation, the quantum of force that they placed in those areas,
and they should,
if you had brought 2-3 divisions from Xinjiang, from Hotan, from Kashgar or from Urumqi, retreat, take them back to their cantonments. Why are we creating a posture of a threat, which actually brings to us that we have to correspondingly respond, which is an escalated situation that exists today? Would it not be advantageous for two civilizational nations to de-escalate, find ways to discuss issues, and maybe it take 1 year, 5 years, it has to be proceeded further. Just retaining in this manner is not the end all of nations which are on the path of national socio-economical development, and it doesn't suit their national interests also.
Well, thank you so much, sir. That really helps a lot. So that was Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma telling us what happened 4 years back, what really triggered the Chinese to take such a step, what is the status now, and what the future holds for India-China relationship. Thank you for watching this interaction for ABP Live. This is Nayanima, Basu.